Hello, gamers! Welcome back to Game Warp. I'm Kim,
I'm Elwood.
and here's our first impressions of the first part of a visual novel called Omega Pattern. Omega Pattern is a visual novel developed by Borokai Studio. And this is their first part is currently available. Well, the twist on Omega Pattern is that like you have multiple choice answers and they will lead to different responses and lead to different routes and endings and also unlock different scenes. So it is a much more diversified sort of visual novel than the traditional static ones, which is really just like reading a book with animations and music to follow. The story of Omega Pattern is that it follows a character where you are called Shael. You wake up after a 2-year coma from an incident and you realize that your mentor has been killed because of this event, and you're taken in by this secret organization called Celta. You have this thing called an Omega Pattern, and in the first part it doesn't really go in depth. You really just trace back the memories of him as he's trying to wake up and, just the experiences he's had. And it's very introductory to the story. Now, I read much more visual novels than Elwood does, but I would like to know, Elwood, what, this is, I believe, your first visual novel. What did you think of it? The experience?
Yeah, I mean, this is my first visual novel. I mean, it's a genre of gaming which I think you've sort of said about really since the start of this project. It's just that it's been one of those things I need to sort of check out. So obviously this is my first sort of entry into the word visual novels, and I have to say it's been very underwhelming. The whole experience with the Omega Pattern. Here we have a game which, as you said earlier, I mean, this is just the first part, but even as the first part, it feels very tedious, which makes it very sort of questionable whether I would come back and want to do a second part. I mean, the whole part, it takes about an hour and a half to run through to about an hour and 45, and essentially consists of you in a hospital bed having flashbacks. And at the same time, you've got a variety of characters, all drawn in a very anime, manga sort of style, who aren't animated as such. They just appear and run for their dialogue, and then they disappear. The frustrating part of that, though, is the fact that whoever is animating this apparently has no short-term memory, because you have a character appear like on the left and then they suddenly switch over to the right, and all they've done is just start a new set of dialogue. So in your mind's eye, what the character is constantly doing is moving from one side of the screen to the other constantly, and it's just very distracting. And you're thinking, well, why did you need to move this character? Couldn't you just leave them in the same location? At the same time, there's a character as well who shows up who looks very similar to Trigun, which again is only further distracting to have this sort of character turn up. But ultimately, there was nothing here. There was nothing that really sort of grabbed me as such. I mean, we'll obviously get into the story in a bit, but just on the surface level, the choices that I made and everything, it felt very... It felt very underwhelming, as I've said already.
Well, just to go back on what you were saying before I go into a little further on what I thought of it, the characters switching back and forth, in defense of that, I feel that what they were trying to do is to accomplish the fact that whoever is the main person talking or the main focus of that conversation would move to the left side of the screen. And there are, I think, 1 or 2 screens where that happens, where they do that swap. And there are moments there where they do cuts in the scenes where I don't quite understand, because it's just kind of switch. I don't know if it's a switch of conversation or if something was supposed to happen. And there's this constant sound that happens, which doesn't really lead to anything. I don't know if it was supposed to signify some sort of big event that happened, or a big change in the storyline, or some big news that dropped. My biggest issue with this was that I guess, like, yeah, on a surface level, since we're talking about that, on a surface level, the first part is not enough. It's not engaging enough, in that sense where, while the motions of it are good, the dialogue, the pieces of the story you see, the options of having multiple choice, the idea that you have different routes because of your choices, all these things are really, really good. They're a good way to be implemented into a visual novel, because honestly we don't have visual novel experiences, at least not enough of them, where it's not static and it's not really just reading through someone's life or someone's, it's like reading an animated story. However, Omega Pattern does have this thing where it ends the first part on a note where I would have wished that it had expanded itself a little further so that we actually knew what was going on. Because right now it's just, oh, they're heading over to, which out the home base of wherever, And I still have tons of questions where, like, I would have liked to know what was the big deal, like added on more of a cliffhanger. That's not a cliffhanger. If you were going to end the story at a certain part, while I like self-contained stories, I also believe that stories should have some sort of, like, if you're going to do a parts to things, you should actually put it in a part where people feel the obligation to keep going on. That's really where I'm at with this, is the fact that there needs to be a little bit more than just memories. It needs to be a little bit more than just, I don't know, like, these memories had to flesh something out, and it felt like it lacked that final objective of it.
The writing doesn't certainly help this story at all. It felt very much like a anime fanboys fan fiction that they've finished their Crunchyroll binge and decided, oh, I'm going to write myself some anime as well. And it just seems so cliche. And like the opening, we've got, oh, is a thuggish man, and they've, whether they like written this in very much like a script format, so it's like stage directions, but certainly as a novel format, the dialogue does not work at all. It comes off frequently clunky and disjointed, whereas the characters are very sort of cookie cutter anime style characters. When you look at some of these characters, you realize that these are just sort of traits and sort of character designs that we've seen countless times in anime before, but here they just have no real sort of purpose to be there. I mean, there's certain ones that work, but that's only because of the location of ends, such as the doctor. It's sort of like, oh yeah, he's a doctor in a hospital, that makes sense. But the first female character you encounter is sort of like, what could she possibly be playing? She's not designed in any way that would make her seem that she fits in the organization. Her character coming across, again, doesn't make her seem that she sort of fits this story at all. She's too very light-hearted, too sort of bubbly. I mean, when it came to the actual dialogue selections, the fact that you could shape the sort of character you are through the choices you make in your dialogue, I thought that was the nice touch in the game, and certainly the part of the story that I did sort of appreciate. And I'm not sure whether, because we said, this is just the first part, so I don't know whether this is just sort of like laying the foundation for bigger things to come in the second part, and it also it's making sense as it goes along. It's very hard to say, but when you're trying to obviously hook an audience on that first sort of part, this is very sort of shaky ground to sort of build it on, especially when you don't go anywhere. I mean, you're in a hospital bed, you're having flashbacks. Flashbacks, if not used correctly, are very much a storytelling crutch, and something that I would avoid using, especially in this sort of story. I think it would have worked much better to start at the beginning for this character and then go forward, rather than have them like the last part with their mentor, then in the hospital bed, and then you're flashing right back to the start. It just didn't help the story at all, and certainly what it was trying to say. What we really want to be known is, like, who's these people that have attacked us? What do they play into this storyline? Not, oh, we're going to go back to how you met your mentor, because that's the story we want to all play through. It just wasn't resonating with me.
Definitely. I agree with a lot of that. I feel that the execution of the first part definitely could be a lot better. However, I do think this is somewhat of a mid-range kind of quality sort of thing. It's more of an indie kind of visual novel, obviously. So probably a lot of this has to do with budget, has to do with everybody's writing style is different. You're not going to appreciate everyone's like it's not our style perhaps, but it might be someone else's. I don't know. In terms of dialogue, I mean it works like as in it's functioning English. That's already very very good. I've read some very shoddy visual novels, and this is definitely somewhere that's the quality of it is as in like the animation and there's music and the style of it all and the concept of it all comes together well enough. It's just the story and the execution of it could have been a lot better. I think that's where I am at, and I think that cutting it off where it was not a good place to do it, and it wasn't a great way to start this visual novel in that sense, where you don't really have that hook for someone to continue. It's still, I would like to see I guess the best comparison that I have is a lot of teen series, like teen TV series I've mentioned before is like that, where season 1 is kind of like a whole build up, and then you get the meat in season 2, and that's the best comparison that I would hope for this. The only thing is it better be a really fantastic season 2, because if not, chances are that's why TV series dies. Is because your season 2 is not great enough to capture the audience that you lost in season 1 to come back. So completely this is really just trying to be constructive on our end. We're on our preferences, obviously this is a lot lacking, and the best way we feel is to rearrange the story a little, to keep it a little bit more engaging in the present mysteries than the past character building sort of options. What do you have any things to add on your impressions and what they could improve?
No. I think we pretty much covered it all already. I mean, it's something that feels like it could have had another refresh. I mean, if you're saying this is a middle of the road experience, I really dread to think what a bottom of the road experience is going to be like. I mean, certainly, I think as a genre of gaming, it's certainly interesting in the same way that a Telltale game are interested in that sort of illusion of having control over the direction of the story. I think it certainly worked better, the dialogue selections in this game than we've seen in previous games of this choice, where we've obviously got those multiple directions the story can go. It's just as we said already, it's just frustrating the fact that we don't get any sort of payoff. There's nothing to latch onto. We have at the start we obviously have the two cliche sort of thug sort of characters who may or may not have more purpose to the story, but everything else it's just so much filler, and it's nothing to sort of latch onto. We just needed one or two things to latch onto, some sort of mystery or a hint of something. But no, it's sort of we're establishing character, and it's sort of well, yeah, that's all good and proper, but I need something to want me to go forward. It's sort of you're a very nice person, but why do I still want to hang out with you? That's the way it thinks. That's the thing. It's kind of like meeting someone at the bar and they tell you all these wonderful things about themselves, but there's no mystery. There's no reason to go and hang out with them again. And that's why I feel like now it's yes, I.
But that you actually make a really good point, and because that's what it is I actually went back and played the game one more time. I played the visual novel 2 times, and the thing I really enjoy about it is the fact that when you do different options, you do get different scenes, and you do get a different ending. And then the first part has 3 different possible endings that you can have, and that is great. I didn't like the fact that you always ended up the same way. The only way was how your character interacted. At least that's how it felt like, because I had an option where I played a good guy, and this was like a very, humbly spoken type of Shael that we got. Our main character is called Shael, in case I didn't mention it before. And then the second one, I went completely shit talk. So I had like a foul-mouthed brat, pretty much. So he ended up having much more vulgar language and stuff like that. So if that was the character building, that is quite shallow. And that is something that I hope is going to be, in the off chance that, people have captured the second one, then I am hoping the second one will be like the first part. Then the second part will truly go into more of a character-based sort of development and depth, and give these stories something a little bit more to find and a little bit more, to discover about what is the Omega pattern and what is this world they're in and what is this future they're in. And, there's all these elements that can be fleshed out, and it's very frustrating to see a game that has obviously some sort of creativity and potential in their story, and it kind of doesn't reach that potential because they've taken the wrong executions. And that's really my impressions of the game right now. This wraps up this episode. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, share, and subscribe. Head over to our home base, thatmomentin.com, to read gaming reviews. To get gaming news every single day, you can like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at GameWarp Podcast. Hang out with us on our Twitch channel where we stream at GameWarp Podcast. And you can also see our gaming obsessions on Instagram. Instagram.com/GameWarp Podcast. Till next time, bye!